Welcome to Try This at Home. I'm Cliff Bumgardner, and Harrison is not here. He is okay. He will be back soon, but he could not make it for the episode this week. But we have a very special guest standing in, Brockton McKinney. Welcome to Try This at Home.
Hey, Cliff. Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
I realized when I was prepping for this, I think we've known each other over a decade now.
Yeah.
Which is terrifying.
Yeah, it definitely is, but it has absolutely been a decade and lots of crazy stories to go along with it.
Longtime friends, you're longtime friends of Harrison as well. We've all worked together in Comic-Con work and creative work, professional work. But introduce yourself a little bit. Tell folks a little bit about what you do and who you are.
Sure, yeah. Writer and director, mostly writer. We did, actually, you and I did a film together, Repchild. It's actually being printed as we speak.
Which Harrison starred in, by the way.
Which Harrison also starred in. Yeah, there's another connection. Yeah, one of our favorite, man, honestly, that guy. Wait till people see him. So that's it. Yeah, writing comic books, writing and directing B movies, and just, me and you we did Comic-Con stuff together. We went to a comic book convention together. And have done just a multitude. We've filmed commercials for James Patterson. We've done.
This is true.
It's a wild range of things. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's very much in the theme of this podcast. We talk a lot about the production aspects of Mythbusters, and so that was one reason I was excited to have you on, is because you have a similar background and can nerd out about some of the same things that we notice on a weekly basis. And as we've gotten to talk to the crew about how this crazy show got put together, because I think it makes you appreciate it even more when you know how hard it is to do this. But I actually did not know, when I asked you to do the show, what your experience with Mythbusters was. How much of the show, before I made you watch this episode for this week, how much of the show had you seen?
Every episode like 12 times. It was crazy. I just knew it backwards and forwards. No, I'd never seen an episode, and it's right up my alley. So I wondered why. And I went back and looked at the start date, which was 2003. It was the year my daughter was born, and so I just I missed everything for probably 10 years right in there, where it was like, and we didn't have cable at that point. You got a baby. I was 28 years old, so I was like, we were watching old VHS and stuff that I had, and my brother loved it though. I remember my brother talking about it. He'd be like, "Oh man, did you see the new Mythbusters?" And I was like, "No, I was hawking my guitar for diapers." So this was like, I went in when you texted me. I was like, I am so in to do it. If you're comfortable with me never having seen it before, I will watch the episode we need to watch. But it was amazing to be. That's just and it was my first episode, and I don't know if they're all that good. But man, it was a banger.
Well, that's what's so exciting about that. When you told me that you had never seen the show before, I was like, wow, that actually brings a whole new dynamic to it, because I've seen pretty much every episode at least once, most of the episodes in this era multiple times. Harrison had seen a good chunk of it when it was on, but had never gone back. But we're so in Mythbusters' brain at this point, because we're, this is the third season. We're 30, I forget how many episodes into the show, that I think sometimes we can get a little analytical and forget just what a good show it is. So I was really excited. I'm going to be excited as we go through the episode to hear your totally fresh perspective, because there's things that I would be like, well, they didn't do it as well as they did on 3 episodes ago. And that's totally not relevant. It doesn't matter at all. It's a TV show. It should just be fun. So I'm very glad to hear that perspective on the show.
Yeah, it was pretty eye-opening. The episode is called like the exploding port-a-potty, I think. So I was like, well, it must have been custom picked for me. But then when I was going back and listening to the other podcast, I was like, no, this is just the next one in order. But I was also like, exploding port-a-potty, I was like, man, that's really cool. But it seems like something maybe me and you could do. I was like, just blow it up. I didn't understand the science and how good these guys were and the technical aspects that went into everything.
Yeah.
So that part was like, I kept rewinding it and just being like, what are they doing now? Let me see that.
I know. It's great. Cool. Well, you mentioned the myths. I will set up our episode. Our myths this week are exploding port-a-potty and drive shaft pole vault. This episode originally aired December 15th, 2004. It was directed by Andrew Farrell, who's a friend of the show. He's been on in the past. Hope to have him on again in the future. And it was written by a new name for us, Richard Stomps, which is just a great name for a writer. I don't know anything about him, but I love his name.
I love his name.
I'm
That's
in.
amazing. Dick Stomps.
Dick Stomps coming in hot with the exploding port-a-potty.
Yep. Oh, this is my episode.
Handpicked. But you talked a little bit about your overall thoughts, but specifically with this episode is also your overall thoughts on the show and your introduction to it. What did you think watching your very first episode of Mythbusters? We'll get stuck into the myths in a second, but just overall thoughts. I'd love to hear what your impressions were.
Sure. Yeah. Well, number one, I didn't know, like, these, I don't know if it's like this all the time, but like there were a lot of misfires.
Yes.
And I was like, maybe they just don't get it sometimes. Maybe it just doesn't happen. And so it was pretty thrilling because in both cases they did.
Yeah.
And so I was just like sitting there watching, being like, it might be a bust. And then all of a sudden the thing would happen and I'd be like, oh, they fucking did it. So yeah, so that was cool. I was like having no idea. I would say thrilling is the word for it, where I was just like glued to it.
It's cool that you said that because I actually had that note too, even as much of the show as we've watched at this point. This was probably more mistakes and more process than we've ever seen on the show, which I thought was really cool. Yeah. To like actually, to your point, there were myths in the early episodes and they didn't have quite the budget, that there were times where it just didn't happen. There were times where they would say, we're busted, not the myth. Like, we didn't have the time or the money or whatever to actually keep testing and making this. So it was cool to see in this episode, they got to that point and then kept going. They got to get it like a second bite of the apple and keep going, which is like that process stuff. I can't think of another television show that I've ever seen that on. Like, modern day Discovery still does really good stuff, but it's a lot more polished and it just kind of things work or things are presented as they are. To see a show like this that feels so genuinely documentary and to see them make a mistake, learn a lesson, screw something up, come back and do it again. It's part of that magic that I think makes the show so different than anything else of its time and certainly anything that's on TV now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I wrote down one that they said like, he said, like, this pothole is the biggest crapshoot yet. And I was like, oh, damn, it's not gonna work. I was like, oh, man, I got an episode where it doesn't happen. And I thought that it was like, they showed more than they had to. They could have cut, like, half of those failures out and made it quicker and, gotten to it. But I loved seeing the failures and them banging their heads against it and trying to figure it out and going back and working on the solutions. And that's when I was like, oh, they're scientists. I see. Before I was like, I don't know, they're kind of like maybe like jackass stunt guys, like doing like, blow up a port-a-potty. That was it. And I was like, these dudes like have every technical asset and are so intelligent. And so it made it so much fun to watch.
Myth 1, drive shaft pole vault. So this is a story that we've all had this happen to us at least 3 or 4 times.
Easily.
A car's drive shaft falls out while it's driving, hits a pothole, and actually acts like a pole vault, flipping the car end over end. Had you ever heard a story like this before?
No. The only thing, I mean, it was like, the scenes in movies where like Hellboy punches the front of the car and flips over.
Right.
I was like, they're going to do it? They're going to like actually try to get that car up? So no, I'd never heard anything like that.
I asked that question because there's times on the show where they're all like, well, that old chestnut. We've all heard this myth before. And you're like, no, I've never, this is not.
I had never heard
this doesn't come across my desk. I don't know.
These seem very specialized and specific.
What's cool about this one is the testing is simple in concept. Like sometimes we see them on the show. On other episodes, they'll do a lot of small scale testing where they'll take something, they'll do it. We kind of see this a little bit later with the methane test and to see what's explosive. We'll see them do that where they'll build a small version of it and they'll kind of scale up as they go. This one is just like, we just kind of got to do it. We just got to see if we can make the car do this. And that turns out to be the story, is just it's way, way harder to do than they ever expected and where that goes. They did, to go to the beginning of this myth, speak to someone. They said, we spoke to someone who'd had this happen on a 1967 Plymouth Fury, which is the most specific incident for something that I am certain has never happened.
They're like, they'll never be able to test this because they'll never be able to find the car.
Right. It's like, not only do they find someone who's like, yes, I had this thing that totally didn't happen. It happened to me, but I have the car. It happened in Christine.
I know. And they brought that car out, and it just reminded me of something that our good friend, Bo Fader, he always says, like, in bad movies, you can always tell which car is going to explode by how shitty it looks. And when they brought that car out, I was like, man, that is one car that looked like it would explode.
Yeah. But I mean, for the show, this is actually one of the nicer like things we've seen them buy. Normally it's all like, because normally it's like scrap, they're just going to take something and blow it up, or they get, last week we had a cement truck and they were getting these old out of commission cement trucks or whatever. This is one where it was like, I actually kind of feel bad that they're going to destroy this thing when they go and buy it.
It was a gorgeous car. It was like, had the big bench seat and everything in it. I was like, but also it was enough of a beater that I was like, okay, I can see this.
I kept wondering, they didn't say this, but like, why? And I know that they just say, some guy told us this was the one. But other than that, they don't give a reason that this car would work. Like, I don't know if it's something with the drive shaft in particular that's supposed to be more prone to fail. Like, they don't really go into that. They just accept whoever this dude who said, it happened to me in a Plymouth Fury.
Yeah, I thought, man, that's a real big, heavy car to try it with. It seemed like the wrong car. I appreciated their, like, sticking to the myth. I mean, like, we're getting this car and doing it with this car. It even had, like, the spare in the trunk, and I was just like, that's weight, but they were like, nah, we're doing it just like this. I appreciated that.
That does make me want to see, like, a smart car. Yeah. See if this would work. You see, squeak. Bink. They just pick it up and try again. They don't need to
just move it back. Drag it back.
We have on the show seen quite a few wonderful locations in what we call the Mythbusters Expanded Universe, which is all the weird places that they get to go, whether it's NASA or airfields or all these crazy places. They go to a drive shaft store. I was not aware that was a thing. Like, I would assume auto parts, sure. They go to like a dude's backyard with just drive shafts stacked up the wall.
The perfect drive shaft. I again, since I'm new to it, I was like, I guess they always got a guy. It's like they just go to the place where whatever that thing is, that they need. I was like, so cool.
I did love the lower third for that guy said, his name is Richard Brown, and it says drive shaft expert. It's like,
tell it like it is.
There is a guy for everything.
There is. I was just like, man, they got a guy for everything. That's crazy.
It was good foreshadowing to one we'll get to later, where they also had a port-a-potty expert.
They did.
What a terrible thing to be good at.
I'd be like, don't put my name on that.
Come to think of it, Richard Brown should have been the porta-potty expert. They should have flipped it around.
It makes perfect sense. Lean into it, guys.
And the drive shaft expert should have been Dick Stumps.
Oh, come on. It's right there. It's right there for them.
They missed the opportunity.
They missed it.
Now, it would not surprise me as we get into the actual... They go, to your point earlier, they go a lot in the process, the actual like engineering and mechanics of this, which is really cool because the show is good at explaining things that I don't understand at all in a way that kind of makes me feel like I do.
Yeah.
I know this is going to be a shock to you. I'm not a car guy.
I know it's going to be a shock to you. I'm not either.
Not car guys on this podcast, but no. I kind of felt like it made sense. Like they actually got me to a point of being like, oh, okay, I see how it's going to work. And they go through the whole, we're going to throw it in neutral and then back into drive. And that's what's going to break the shaft. And like, it's a really special thing when a TV show that is at the end of the day, entertainment, funny, haha, we're going to blow something up. Exploding porta-potty, yay, can also go really deep into stuff like this and leave you going like, oh, I understand that a little bit better than I did before.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if it was on purpose, but just the car itself being an older car, like when they were showing, I was like, well, I can understand these parts a little bit, you know, and they were showing this is a screw and a bolt and they go together. I was like, right on. We'll reverse it. And I was like, hey, I've done that with screws before. So like, it was great. I was like, is that how cars work? Neat.
I'm a mechanic now.
I guess I'm a mechanic.
The thing where they did blow my mind, and I'm so curious to get your thoughts, because at this point in the show, we have seen them remote control cars before. But for someone who has not seen that at all in this show, how cool is a fully remote controlled Plymouth Fury?
It blew my mind. Well, at first, the very first shot, they're actually driving the car because they're showing it. So I was like, are they fucking stuntmen? Like, are they going to hit that thing and flip it with him in there? And then they're like, no, we're not going to do that. And I was like, oh, I guess they're just going to like shoot it toward it or something. And then they're like, no, we're going to remote pilot it. And it's going to show each of the things, how it's going to like shift and how it's going to drive and all the. That's when I was like, oh, these guys are geniuses. I see. You're not going to fire it out of a cannon. You're going to drive it with an RC remote.
You were waiting for Johnny Knoxville to show up and be like, when do I get naked?
Oh, right. And I saw those guys and I was like, you ain't no Johnny Knoxville. This is going to be a rough time for you, man. You better have that 5-point harness on. I got worried. Like, I know my face kind of dropped where I was like, oh, they're going to drive it. And I was like, oh, shit. But then they did, they put that thing on there. And I found that, like, not only fascinating, but I was also just like, I loved the process where they'd put it in there and it wouldn't work at first.
Yeah.
You know? And they'd send that car out. And it would just drive away.
Well, that's the thing. You mentioned that you were like, oh, are they going to do this with him in the car? They accidentally do.
Yeah,
so,
yes.
This moment we should talk about. For fans of Mythbusters, this is a legendary moment. The car going out of control and hitting the fence is like, that's something that got replayed over and over. All the blooper reels, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, so I've seen it a million times. Not having seen this episode in a long time, what I forgot is that Adam is in the car when it happens.
He's in the back seat.
He's in the back seat. And you can just hear him amazingly not swearing, which I thought was impressive.
Yep.
You can hear his mic for, I guess, as long as he is in range.
In range.
Just going like, whoa, 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 whoa. As the car, not only through a fence, towards the San Francisco Bay.
Oh, yeah.
By the way.
Yeah, it's just like a few hundred feet away from going in the dip.
I had completely forgotten that he was in the car when this happens, and it blew my mind to see that again. I can't believe he got in there when it was remote controlled.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, is that something they know? Like, why?
No.
Why did he have to ride along when it was remote? Like, what was the plan if things didn't go right? Because he wasn't able to stop it, right? It was just like, it stopped because it got out of range. Like, whew, the automatic brakes worked. I was like, why were you back there?
I do love the idea of like, we're going to spend a lot of time and effort and expense making a remote controlled car because it's far too dangerous for anybody to be in it. Adam, get in the back seat. And then we're going to tell you why. What, to your point, why is that necessary? Right. If you're remote controlling the car, that implies no humans needed.
No humans. And they never mention it. They never say like, that we shouldn't have done that. Right? He couldn't have helped.
There's no.
They were just like, woof. They were like, everything's fine. Let's get it back. Let's not let you ride in the back anymore. I was like, but why would they to begin with?
I was thinking I want to like take that footage of the car veering off and like turn it into a Tesla ad. Like a self-driving
so
through the fence.
The new Tesla goes through the fence.
The Tesla Fury.
You should leave Adam's audio in there. Whoa, whoa.
Whoa, We got two actually back-to-back kind of famous bloopers in this episode because while they're setting up, so it's worth saying, since you haven't seen the show before, the runway where they're doing all this testing, which is gorgeous, by the way. We had Peter Heat, one of the cameramen from Mythbusters, on the show last week. And cool. So maybe it was because he was in my head or something, but I was thinking about how the show was shot. And some of those shots, like into the sunset with the heat distortion coming off, like it's a beautiful location that they had. It's one of the prettiest episodes we've seen. I'm pretty sure this is the runway at the Alameda Naval Base, which the reason that is like a thing that people know, that stretch of road that they're on was built for the Matrix sequels.
Wow.
The
really?
big car chase in like Reloaded, where that was shot there. That was where they made the highway because they needed to make it look, futuristic and different. And so they actually built it there. So it is a filming set, which is why Mythbusters for years was able to use it. So pretty cool location for this episode.
That is so cool. Yeah, they did some great shots. They had the bikes that they were kind of riding around on, and they'd do those little mini shots where like it'd just be like the sun going down. You'd see somebody ride across. It'd be like ding ding.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's cool, man.
And the bike is what I wanted to get to because another legendary blooper from the show. So Tori, the way this show works, I'm realizing as I'm saying this that there's so much insider info. There's the Mythbusters, and they have what's called the build team. And later in the show, the build team become fully fledged. There's other hosts. But at this point, Carrie, Grant, and Scotty are kind of like assistants. They do the building. They do their own, like the second myth is like theirs. So it's kind of like the kids get to do their own thing,
Yeah.
So at this point in the show, Tori is still new. He just popped up this season on the show. I had no idea that this moment happens this early on because it is infamous that he is on his bike and they challenge him to try to hop over the most, like, if you picture a little red wagon, this is what it was. Like, I don't know why it was there.
It's like a toy wagon. They were dragging some stuff with it. They were taking like some of the dirt and stuff from the pothole and dragging it away with it. And then I guess on the downtime,
jumping
he sees it. Yeah, and also like if I watched it like twice, and I don't think anyone dares him. I think he says, "Watch this." I think that's what I loved about it. Is like he was like, "I'm going to do this," and they were like, "Oh yeah, you totally can do that.
You should do that." And he tries to jump this wagon, and he hits so hard. As many times as I've seen this, I cannot get over. He goes fully over the handlebars, cannot get his hands up, like face into pavement, and slides across the runway. And the shot is perfect.
Perfect.
Like,
they get it all.
They get the whole thing. They get the run up, boom, over it, smash into the ground. It's hilarious and terrifying and just a legendary moment in Mythbusters history.
He gets up from it
Immediately.
He gets up. He's like, "Oh, woof, woof."
That sucked, and then keeps going.
And then he's like, "Oh, well, back to the thing." I was like, man, as somebody who's ridden a lot of bikes, has bikes tattooed on him, BMX and stuff. Number one, the bike he was riding, I was like, you ain't gonna bunny hop that over a wagon. It's like a mom bike, like a beach cruiser.
Yeah.
So heavy. I was like, so bold just to even try to bunny hop anything. But a wagon? I was like, man. And then secondly, that slam, I was like, man, that was brutal. And props to you, man. Got right back up.
It is the one thing about, like, it's one of those moments of when it happens, you've got to be embarrassed, and obviously it hurts, but you're also like, we're making a TV show.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good moment for the TV show.
You got something. He was like, yeah, did you get that? Like,
I'm in the edit this week.
Yeah.
I am safely in this week because
I'm definitely going to be a part of this one.
There's no way that they can cut me out. But, oh my gosh, what a legendary moment. So when they get into the testing of this, you hit it earlier, like it doesn't go well. Their initial idea for just weakening the drive shaft and then dropping it just doesn't work very well. And they keep having to weaken the drive shaft, do it over and over and over again. And like this is where us having worked in production and having been on sets together really like my brain went to, I know this feeling. Mm-hmm. You can see it on their faces of the sun's going down. We're losing the day. We are not getting this. It is not working. We spent so much time and money. They probably only had one day set aside for this. Like, I don't know that people think about, if you're just watching a TV show, every single thing is timed when you're making something like this. When you're making TV, when you're making a movie, time literally is money. It is the budget. You don't budget for a camera and microphone. You budget for time, that you need a camera for X number of hours, right? So watching them go through this was simultaneously riveting television, but for me and doing what we do, painful.
Oh, thinking about that reset each time,
Yeah.
how hard it was, especially right at first when they're just trying to keep it loose enough, and then there's one time where they reset the whole thing and they start the car, it just falls out.
Yeah.
There's like they get it going all the way and it never comes out. And then they get it away and it comes out, but it doesn't make it. And then you got to reset. They've got the extra car driving beside, filming. They're behind it. All that, bringing all that back and resetting all that every time they had to do it. I was like, oh, guys, I'm so sorry.
It's brutal.
I'm so sorry.
The solution it leads them to, though, is genuinely like genius. Like the whole time I was watching them do this, I was thinking, how do you? I'm trying to wrap my head around because they're prop guys, right? They're special effects guys. So
Yeah.
I was thinking, like, if they were rigging this for a movie, what would they do? Like, how would they make this repeatable? Because you couldn't do this, and I couldn't think of it. I was like, do you blow it with explosives? Do you? How do you completely fake it and everything's on wires and you're just how would you do this? And what they end up coming up with is a plan to make the drive shaft unscrew itself by slamming the car into reverse, and so they can drop it every single time on cue. It is one of the most genius pieces of engineering we've seen them do on the show, because it is just a genuine, like, they are in their zone, they have a problem, and they solve it in the simplest, most brilliant way. And again, it's one of those things of, like, even saying that, I'm like, how is that good TV? But it is.
It is. And the thing is, they do lose the light, and they don't get it.
They go
first
home.
Day.
Yeah.
They go home. So for me, watching it the first time, I was like, I guess sometimes it don't work. I was like, I guess that's it. And then they come back and they have this whole thing. He's like, he's thought about it. They're drawing it out. They get it done. And that's the part I was talking about with the screwing and unscrewing. I was like,
Yeah.
that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
I can see how that works. And man, if it doesn't work, they're just like, boop, it pops out right when it's supposed to. And the reset's easier.
Yeah.
So the production side of it, you're like, oh, they just get to screw it back now. Yeah. So that felt good too. So yeah, just riveting the whole time.
Because if you think about what they're trying to do, not only are they trying to drop the drive shaft, but we didn't even talk about the way that they had made almost like a little, it reminded me of like a home plate sized and shaped hole in the asphalt that they're trying to hit to make the pole vault happen. So you've got a remote controlled car, you've got a follow car. The remote controlled car has to stay straight enough to hit this one specific spot, and just before it, they have to drop the drive shaft. And I kept thinking, why not rig the car to go with the drive shaft dislodged? But they made the point, it can skip. If it doesn't fall directly into the hole, it's going to jump over it more than likely, and they're not going to get the test, and they're just going to break it, and they're not going to get anything. So like it kept getting more complicated as it went on as I was watching it, and seeing them conquer it. Again, for Harrison and I, we're so far into the show, we've seen them be beaten by stuff in the past, or we've seen they just didn't have the resources that they needed. And now to see them progress to this level to where they can nail it is amazing. Like it's
I said yes.
Yeah, right.
When it happened, because I was like, man, and I was like, why can't you just make the hole wider? I was like, because dummy, your car couldn't go over it. The car would hit the hole. Right. I was like, why can't they make it deeper? I was like, no, it's just doesn't. If it hits it, hits it. It's gonna bounce, one way or the other. It's just everything's got to work out perfectly. And the two of them in the follow car with the RC controllers behind it, oh man, just so cool looking. I loved it.
Such good TV. They finally get the the hit that they're looking for. They nail it. It does lift the car.
Yeah.
Actually quite a bit more than I thought. So that's actually a question before we get into this. Sometimes Harrison does this on the show. Did you have an idea of what you thought was going to happen when they finally hit it, if they finally hit it?
I thought they weren't going to hit it.
Yeah, just complete misses.
I just was like, this is impossible. It just didn't seem like it was going to work. It didn't work the first day or whatever. And I was like, I've never seen the show before, so I guess you just take it to completion. And sometimes it doesn't work. So when it did hit it, I went, yeah! Because it just like busted it up. I was like, man, if we had gotten that shot,
I know.
If that's the shot and you get a car to do that, I didn't have any idea.
I remembered that it ultimately got impaled through the car. What I didn't remember, though, was that it hops. It's not a pole vault the way that it's described, but it jumps that car. And it made me think about, wondering where you come down with this, because this is something we've talked about a lot on the show, where there have been times where something is said to explode. The porta potty is a good example of like, oh, this thing was said to explode, and their verdict will be, well, it didn't blow up. There was a little bit of fire. And I'm like, no. If I'm in that thing and I'm telling the story, I'm saying it exploded, right? And
Right.
like, so I kind of feel like if this happened to my car, I would say my friggin' car pole vaulted over the drive shaft, right?
Oh, yeah, you'd be saying it from a hospital bed because it's so brutal when you watch it. You know, you're in a car and you hit like a curb from the outside. Doesn't look that big of a deal, but inside you feel it.
Yeah.
Imagine that thing jamming up through the trunk and picking you up and slamming out, all these pieces coming off of it. I was like, it was incredible. I would definitely say my car pole vaulted.
Yeah. And they end up saying that this one's busted, and I get it because they were looking for a flip. That was really what was described in the myth. But I did just want to say, it kind of feels to me like if this happened to me, I'd say it pole vaulted. But we also saw the chances of this happening are astronomical. So I
Right.
don't believe it has happened based on how hard it was when they were trying to make it happen.
Yeah.
So their verdict was busted, but I do think it's worth saying, like, if it happens to you, you're going to say your car pole vaulted.
Yeah, I did not agree. I'd say that myth was founded. It hit and it popped, and that would have busted everything up. I was like, man, you guys did it. I was like, you're too hard on yourself.
It'd be great. You know, they have those metal signs that come in so if it's just said founded.
It's true. I was like, guys, you did it. I don't know what you want from it.
Yeah, that's.
Well, you know, it tells us one thing about this. Any faster wouldn't have done us any good because it's just going to poke it through further.
Yeah, that's true.
And
Absolutely.
So,
And it did lift the back of the car up off the ground at least like a foot or 18 inches from what I saw.
and the car is done for.
Yeah, that's what Mythbusters took another car out of its misery.
Myth 2, exploding port-a-potty. So this is another story myth. And it is one that when they started to describe it, I was like, we're both from the South. I kind of understand this because they specifically say that a man in West Virginia, and that's going to come back at the end. I'll save this for the end, but that is going to come back. Lit a cigarette in a porta-potty. And when he did it, it actually lit the methane caused by human waste and whatnot, blew up the porta-potty, and the man got third-degree burns. So that's what we're kind of testing for here, is not just that it lit, but that it was an explosive force, bad enough, light you on fire, make something really bad happen. This falls into category myths that they do on the show a lot that I love, which is just like redneck stuff. Like, doesn't it seem like this could have happened near us?
Man, I watched a dude come out of a porta potty with a cigarette in his hand this weekend at a wedding I went to. He had a koozie that he had brought with him because we're at a wedding, and the koozie said, my wife was like, "What does that say?" I said, "It says I pee in pools." And man, I could have written down 50 things and I never would have gotten close. That dude was smoking in a porta potty. So yeah, I totally believe this could happen. As soon as I started watching, I was like, oh man, it's a cautionary tale, if anything.
I love that. You're not expected to do this podcast. You come on, you're like, I'm actually well researched. I just saw this in real life.
That part I know. That part I saw happen.
Not a car guy. Rednecks with cigarettes. I'm your guy.
You know it.
Oh, that's hilarious.
He didn't explode, so but I can see it happening.
They, as they go into this myth, they cut to, it's kind of funny to me, they cut to an old Charmin commercial, a Mr. Whipple Charmin commercial that Adam was in as a kid. Yeah. And the funny thing, I remembered seeing this, and actually when Adam was on the show back last year, we mentioned to him that we talked to him, he used to do some acting. I didn't remember that the only reason it's in this episode is because it's toilet paper. Like, there's no story reason whatsoever to bring it in. They just wanted to embarrass Adam, which I thought was great.
I didn't even get the toilet paper thing. I was so busy looking at it being like, is that Adam? This is like my first time really seeing him, so I was like, oh man, that's crazy. There he is.
What did you think, speaking of that, what did you think of the Adam and Jamie, of all the hosts really, and their different dynamics on the show?
I loved it. I mean, I immediately got it. As soon as they were like talking to each other, I was like, oh, I see how this is. I see who's the calm one, who's the one who's going to get hot-headed about it, like everything. I was like, man, I felt like I'd already watched it after like 10 minutes. So I was like, I know these guys, and I'm so into their dynamics. So yeah,
it's great. Really cool. We had, when we had Adam on the show, we talked to him about that and about how much of that dynamic was for the sake of a TV show and how much was real. And he made the point at a certain point, producers tried to produce that out of them, and they didn't let it happen. They stopped it because they said, we're just different people. And if you put us in situations together, it's going to happen. You don't have to produce this. Like, this is 100% real. Our arguments, our banter, everything was exactly as you see it in real life. And it's another one of those things of today, that would be so overproduced. That would be so planned, and they would screen test different people to be hosts.
Got some bits they're doing. Yeah.
Totally. And just seeing those guys interact with each other, we've seen that evolve over the course of the show this far. And it's really cool, as you said, to like now you cut on an episode and go, oh, I know the characters. Like I'm in this week. I know who my heroes are.
Yeah, and it didn't seem like there was any acting to me.
No.
It was just like they're barely aware of the camera when they're actually doing what they're doing. And occasionally they'll be like, that's enough of that. And like, that kind of thing. But like for the most part, they are just like in it with each other and with the build crew. And just like, you really feel like you're just watching people who don't care about the cameras. They care about this thing they're getting ready to do.
Another great character on the show is the narrator, who we've also been fortunate enough to get to talk to here on the podcast, Robert Lee, who adds so much with his voice. And he had a line in this episode that it made me laugh out loud, and it seemed like something that we would have written into something that we did, where he calls the porta-potty a, quote, sporty one-seater.
Oh, yeah.
It's just so silly. It's just silly fun. It's
but
so
that
good.
That voice just sells it,
I know.
Like, oh, yeah.
Everything he's like, he was on the show and talking to us, and we were just like kids, just like, oh my God, I'm hearing the voice for real.
Right,
it's just,
that's like talking to Don Pardo or something.
Exactly.
Like,
it's just him. They immediately followed that by something that I have to tell you doesn't happen on the show every week. Adam does not show up with his poo in a box. On an average, that is not a recurring segment on Mythbusters. Right. Just so you know, in case you wanted to watch another episode, that's not coming back.
I appreciated how they made it clear what it was, but then just skirted away from it.
Yeah.
They were like, we're not going to get into too much of this and discuss how it was done as far as samples, how things were retrieved and stored. They just got into it, and they made some funny stuff like, has anybody got any air freshener kind of things. But I did appreciate that. I was like, we're getting all the science out of it, and they're actually staying pretty clean as far as, that kind of thing goes. I don't know if I could have done it.
Yeah. Well, they keep cutting to as he's like opening the thing to make you think they're going to show you. It was kind of well done. It was like, yeah, and then they cut away, right?
When they let you off the hook.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
It was good because this is where they do kind of a small scale, a version of a small scale test of this, which is to see how much methane human waste can actually produce. So we get some... Even though it's called Exploding Porta-Potty, we get some real science in this one as they talk about this, and they actually put various amounts of human waste into beakers. It is just like a science experiment from hell.
They're measuring it. They've got like this thing that's got levels on it.
Yep.
It's telling them what the levels are. Like, we're not quite getting what we're looking for out of this. I was just like, man, you guys are really putting in the work because this is unnecessary. I don't know if you have to do this. You can just get whatever the component is, which I think eventually they decide methane.
Yeah.
But I was like, you could just use that, man. We'd be cool with that.
We'd be fine with it. We didn't need to know. It was, I mean, maybe I'm just a nerd, but I did find it interesting. They said only 40% of people actually produce methane.
Yeah.
Which is kind of like, that's an old gag, right? Cartoons and shows, and that's always been like lighting, that's always been a thing.
Yeah.
I had no idea that it was actually not common.
Yeah, and I'm like, not common. I was like, that's just like, then how do you know Adam is, it's just like, you might be testing the wrong guy.
Yeah. They end up they get a porta potty. They're actually gonna test this for real. It was interesting here to see the build team doing this. As I mentioned earlier, this is the first season with the build team, and they have been getting more like responsibility as the show goes on. Originally, they were just the ones who built stuff for Adam and Jamie. Now they're doing their own stuff. And there was a dynamic in this we hadn't really seen before, where Adam and Jamie are really the parents being like, so what's your plan, guys? Did you think this one through? Did you think that through? And it was kind of a neat dynamic to show you, again, how much thought is actually going into this, and how much like Adam and Jamie are like, no, this is what it, like, you have to think of all these eventualities, and we have to have plans after plans. It was a neat kind of glimpse into the way the show is made that even here thus far we haven't seen before.
Oh, that's interesting because, yeah, I definitely felt the mom and dad dynamic, and I just thought that's the way it was. It just seemed like there's even a point where he's like, something happens and something gets messed up, the lighter gets messed up, and he's saying, you know, like, didn't I tell you to build? Then he's like, I know. You just watch it like, why did I even talk anything about it? I should have just done it, you know? And I was like, oh, I've had this conversation with my kid before.
Yeah.
I was like, so I thought that's how it was all the time, but I loved it. It's like, and they're still very like gentle, and you can tell everybody's having a good time and like laughing with it. But I did like seeing them be like, what'd you think was going to happen there?
So you got to meet a character for the first time on this show who's legendary of Mythbusters and is represented on my microphone here on the podcast, Buster, the crash test dummy.
It killed me when they said his name. When they said Buster, I wrote it down. I was like, crash dummy Buster. I was like, that's just genius and funny because they bring that thing out. I was like, God, I guess that's the one they use all the time.
Yeah.
And he's pretty messed up. And
He's been through it.
Yeah, and they don't introduce him. They're just like, I heard someone say it. They're like, put Buster on the toilet. Like, what? And they'd put like a sheet for him, like a little thing to sit him on. I was like, oh, Buster, that's a great name.
We have seen Buster dropped off of buildings, shot with guns, lit on fire multiple times, including in this episode. We've seen his legs get blown off by dropping into water.
Wow.
This poor dummy has been through it and looks awful by this point in the show.
You could absolutely tell that he was. He had been used, well loved, and they was continuing it. I love that his name was Buster. We had a torso of a zombie that somebody had made him. We called him Mr. Burns because we would always set him on fire in the older movies, and it was the same kind of thing. I was like, oh, that's their Mr. Burns.
I love how many of these things that you have life parallels for. It's perfect.
Yeah, I was like, oh, I know that guy. I was like, what's his name? Buster. I was like, that's a good name for him. He'd be good friends with Mr. Burns.
The testing here, kind of like with the previous myth, is pretty straightforward. They're just going to try to do it. They're going to pump methane into the port-a-potty, and they go back and forth a little bit of like trying to fill it up and moving their gauge around to see, you know, how full the port-a-potty needs to be. This is an interesting thing that comes back on the show a lot. Like, we've seen it a few times already, and I know it comes in the future, of how strangely difficult it is to, like, light a box of gas on fire, which is a very interesting thing because you don't think of, like, you think about, oh yeah, it's explosive, you have a match, boom, you're done. But there's all sorts of science behind the amount of air and oxygen that's mixed into it and in the environment and all this kind of stuff. It's always fascinating to me when we see that on the show because it's so not what you expect. You're just waiting for boom. And then they go, no, it's actually kind of hard to make stuff blow up. Sort of makes me feel better.
Does, definitely. I was like, oh, okay, all right. You think you pump any amount of methane and light a match, you're going to blow up.
Yeah.
But it does not happen that way. And they're like, and that's the part where, too, I was like, oh, these guys are scientists. They're just, like, really figuring this stuff out because they're like, how are we going to put this in there? And what's the ventilation like? What's the mechanism that's going to light it on fire, you know? Meanwhile, I was thinking about, I was like, I think we would just fill it up with those old firework mortar shells and then light it from the outside and run. Yeah, we blew it up.
Wouldn't even be filming it. It'd just be for fun.
Just for the shit of it. Literally.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
did.
so I was like, wow, they're really got like figuring it out and putting the thing in, running the hoses and like getting everything right. Yeah.
I did love at one point. So they they start a fire in the porta potty, and it actually just sets Buster's like fake skin on fire. And they're trying to figure out what to do because, to the previous point, if they ventilate and they introduce oxygen, the fire is going to get bigger. Like it's going to make it safe for them to approach, but they're just going to fully light Buster on fire. And we get Jamie Heineman, one of our favorite characters on the show. The guy is just a walking robot. It is very rare that you get genuine emotion and like comedy out of Jamie, but I love this moment, so I pulled the clip where as Buster is on fire, Jamie is asking what to do, and he says,
We can ventilate, but it's going to accelerate the bum fire.
completely serious. Like it's going to accelerate the bum fire. We all know this. That is what happens.
I rewound it like 3 times. Because I laughed the first time and I was like, is he saying bum fire? I was like, is he saying bone? I was like, no, it's bum. Accelerate the bum fire.
Like it's a normal thing that everyone,
Yeah,
well, of course, if we
He's
ventilate,
just telling how it is.
it's going to accelerate the bum fire. We just need to be careful about that. Oh my God, I love.
And I was
Jamie
like, you
so
can
much.
take it like so many different ways because yes, it's like a bum fire is like just a crappy fire that somebody set out in the middle of nowhere. Also, Buster got hit. It started on his butt. It was like it did start where the crotch area was. Like that could be the bum fire too. Yeah, just I loved it. Made me laugh.
He had a little smile on his face as he's saying
Yeah,
it too.
just kind of looking at the camera.
He's fully. I did get the vibe from Adam and Jamie of like, we're not on the hook for this one. The build team is. We're just out here to have fun and set some stuff on fire. It was a nice dynamic.
Yeah. And again, I thought that was their thing too, where they were just like, oh, thank God, we did the one with the car. Now we get to take a little break. Watch these fools try to blow up a porta potty.
We're just gonna hang out and cook some weenies on the bum fire. That's what
Put it on the bum fire.
they end up. To your point earlier about just putting M80s in it or something, they basically end up doing that. They end up pumping the entire thing with methane and lighting a road flare.
And lighting a road flare. But I still was like, I feel like that, because I was like, they're talking about like, they're like, well, there's not enough of the poo, giving off the methane. I was like, man, it just depends on how many people have been in that thing, right? If it's like the last day of Ren Fair. And somebody lights one of those big old cigars. I was like, man, you're kind of doing that by pumping the methane in. And then the cigar is I was like, man, I don't know. I think found it.
I just want to see Buster in like period dress for the Ren Fair, getting lit on fire from the ass up.
Yes, he's got that little jester hat with the little bells on it.
Yeah. I mean, that's where they end up kind of going with this, is that it would take so much methane and such a specific concoction of methane that just human waste in there is not going to do it. And it's not until they've busted the myth that they go back to the original story, which I thought was fascinating, and reveal that the actual incident happened at a methane plant.
Right. You're burying the lead.
Well, I mean, I guess this from a storytelling perspective, it's good, because otherwise you'd be going, well, yeah. Like, duh.
Well, sure.
Of course. It kind of, but I was like, that's like the call was coming from inside the house, man.
Yes, they're like, it was a methane. He's sitting on a thing at a methane plant, and that's what I was like. Then you did do it. You definitely did it.
So not only did they mention that at this part of the episode, I looked it up. I did some research. This is completely true. And I found a story. I found an actual article by CBS News from July 15th, 2004, titled "Exploding John, the Porta Potty Packed a Bang." And it describes an incident where someone in Blacksville, West Virginia, so just like they name in the myth, said a portable porta potty exploded when the man inside lit a cigarette. And the initial article was that the officials did blame it on the buildup of methane gas in the portable toilet. And that seemed to be the story at the time. A year later, so this would be 2005, this episode of Mythbusters came out at the end of 2004. So this is after the show is already out. I found another article where the man who is named, his name is John Jenkins, sued the company for $10 million. Because what they had found was, apparently it was a porta-john on a construction site at a methane plant, and someone had run over a methane line, and it was broken directly beneath the porta-potty and pumping straight methane into the porta-potty. And that's what caused the explosion.
Wow.
So it's legitimate that this did happen, and after this episode came out, this would have come out that it was not only was it real, but it had happened because of this, and the guy sued for $10 million. I couldn't find if he got his money. I hope he did.
Man, I hope he did too.
What a great story to have. But
right.
yeah.
Also, dude, it's like, there's a construction site with methane and a porta potty. And you're like, that's a lot of methane. And then you get in the porta potty and you're like, I gotta have one. That's kind of on you, right? Just in case.
Yeah. Well, he lives life on the edge. He pees in pools and he takes a cigarette into the methane jar. It was that guy.
Oh man, he did not get the money.
Nor learn his lesson, apparently.
No, I saw him and he was like, I'll try it again. I'll roll the dice one more time.
I didn't want to be, at the beginning of that story, too judgmental, but I didn't want to back up to porta-john at a wedding.
Oh, it was in the woods, man. It was in the woods.
I just felt the listener needed some context.
I don't go too much into it. I will say that the woman behind me was like, you have spiders all over you. I was like, oh, God.
That's well, I hope the marriage does well.
It seemed like it was beautiful. I think they're going to be great. Got a good support system there.
Nothing blew up, so
nothing exploded. Yeah, not trying. I'll tell you that. He was in there. He was like, wow, damn it. No lottery this time.
Well, that is our episode for this week. This being your first, now that we've made it to the end of your first ever episode of Mythbusters, do you think you're going to keep watching? Were you intrigued? How do you feel about the show, having now been through the experience?
Yeah, I definitely am going to keep watching, and I'm excited because I was like, oh, you know what I think I'll do is I'll watch the episode and then listen to the podcast and kind of really get into it, And I was like, there's so much, it's so much to watch. I love having that thing that somebody turns you on to that it's just seasons and seasons.
Yeah.
So you're just like, I can just it's late and you're like, I can put on something where it's like my friends, you're just seeing them do stuff and then listen to my friends do a podcast about it. I was like, oh, that's very comforting.
Exactly. Well, that's awesome. I hope that you enjoy the show, and we'll have to have you back on the podcast in the future when you're deeper into your Mythbusters journey.
Oh, I would love to come on. I'd love to be on with you and Harrison, and
yes.
And I hope that you guys, if you have another episode where you're like, that seems like it'd be up his alley, another exploding porta potty. Yeah, please, I'd be honored.
Well, if there's a peeing in the pool myth, we'll tie everything together.
Please do. Let's book in this thing.
Well, we hope that for folks listening, we hope you will do the same thing and go out, watch Mythbusters, and then listen to the podcast. That's the idea. We will be back next week. Harrison will be back for our normal recap episode. The next episode is Yawning Contagious? That is the header on HBO Max. We don't watch ahead, so I don't know what exactly will be in that episode other than that myth, but we hope that you guys will watch that and then come on back and listen to the show. Brockton, where can folks find you or what you do if they want to check you out?
Yeah, Brockton McKinney, Facebook, Instagram, that's pretty much it. Oh, Blue Sky. Just Brockton McKinney. Thankfully, that's it. There's only one of that name. So that's me. Yeah, so you find me there, and yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks so much for joining us, and we will be back with a regular episode next week. Until then, thanks for listening. Try This at Home is produced by Slugline Media. The show is written, hosted, edited, and shot onto the internet by Cliff Bumgardner and Harrison Stewart. Our music is by the mysterious Breakmaster Cylinder. You can follow the show on Instagram at TryThisPod or email us, trythisathomepod@gmail.com.